thank you for coming back to the show. I love seeing you, and I love doing Talk with TQ because I get to interview the most interesting people, and everybody is just so incredibly unique and generous of spirit and just opening themselves up and letting me in as I probe into why they're on the planet. So tonight, I have a really special guest. I've never really interviewed a person like this. Her name is Melissa Loehr, and she's a judge. You know, there's been a lot of talk about judges these days, and I'm just honored to be able to interview one. I know that everybody's different, but I want to find out what makes Melissa Loehr tick. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
The pleasure's all mine. So here you are. You're in Peekskill. You're a judge.
Yes.
I'm trying to picture you in a black robe. I just can't do it. You know, I'm saying, where's the black robe? I can't picture it. And people are talking a lot about judges these days. And you know, I won't talk too much about the politics involved around it, but I'm really curious about the psyche of someone that takes it upon themselves to get into the legal profession and then do public service and become a judge and want to do more judging. Tell me what that's like and what that's all about. How did you get into this field?
So I decided, I had a strong sense of social justice, so I decided to become a public defender. I did the criminal defense clinic when I was in Pace Law School, and I knew as soon as I stepped into the courtroom that that's what I wanted to do. And so I spent my career as a public defender fighting for all of our rights. And once I had a couple of decades of that work in, I wanted to take it further. And so I was lucky enough to become a judge in Peekskill, the first woman for Peekskill judge that we've ever had.
Okay.
And take it further, take it onto the bench, and use my perspective as a public defender to bring my public interest to that space as well.
Is there a common denominator? Do you believe there's a common denominator amongst judges in general? Is there something that makes them all somewhat alike in one way or another, or is it unique? Is it unique as the Peekskill arts community? I mean, I don't really understand, and I try to, but I want to.
I think judges are all very different people, and I can't speak for anybody else about why they choose to do this. But for me, it's just a continuation of my public service to continue to do good work. The reason I became a lawyer and went to be a public defender was because I wanted to serve my community. I assessed all of my strengths and decided I would be a lawyer, and that's how I would serve my community and serve New York and now serve Peekskill. And hopefully come after the primary June 25th, where I'm running for county court, I'm hoping to take that onto the county court bench as well, and that's going to the general election in November. So I can only speak for myself as far as wanting to become a judge. I just feel like it's a graduation of my service in a sense, because I've been a public defender for a couple of decades and I have all the experience to do that and to really take the unique experiences that I've had in working with people and bring it onto the bench and go from that point of view.
It sounds very personal.
Yes, it is.
To you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I kind of quipped a little bit before you came. We were saying, oh, the judge is coming. You know, I wonder if she knows Judge Judy. You know, I'm thinking that's a judge.
Yeah.
Everybody knows.
We don't all know each other. That's
what? You kidding? I thought you all knew each other. You don't hang out at night. None of that.
No.
It's not like rocking with Judge Judy. No.
No, that's not. Actually, my father is a judge, though. I would have to say that. So he's one judge that I do hang out with. He's a person of great integrity. He's a state Supreme Court judge. So he's taught me a lot. He's instilled a lot of good values in me from the time when I was young. And actually, I have a very political family because I grew up in Yonkers, and he was a two-term councilman there and the mayor. So since I was about this big, I've been campaigning for the Democratic Party, pounding the streets, doing grassroots campaigning for my father and other Democrats. So I spent my life doing this, and that's what I was taught to do, and I'm still doing it now.
Yeah, I have to say I question, you know, the fact that a judge would have a political party. You know, you always think of them as being very neutral.
Right.
You know, but I guess if you feel a passion for a population, you know, perhaps you feel that there is no balance of the scales. You think that there's a little imbalance, and so you find that you're going to lean towards one way and to shift that balance.
Right, that's a good point. I mean, because as a judge, I have to be impartial. I have to follow the law, and that's what I have to do. That's my job. But still, when you're campaigning for a judicial position, you belong to a political party, and political parties endorse certain people or not. So I do have those democratic values. I've been a Democrat all my life. I would never seek any other party line. Some people seek more than one party line. That's not something I would ever do. So it's interesting because I have to remain impartial, and I seek equal justice for everybody, regardless of race, gender, whatever your experiences is. And I actually, when I have people in my courtroom, I think of them as individuals, and I treat them as people, single people that come before me and have a very unique set of circumstances that I need to address.
So where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Peekskill?
So I grew up in Yonkers, campaigning for my dad, as I said, and Yonkers it's another beautiful river town. It's like a bigger version of Peekskill in a way. So I tend to like to live near the water, so I ended up settling down in Peekskill over 20 years ago. I was drawn to the community by the beauty and the diversity and the artists that were flocking in at the time. So I never left, like you. I never left.
I know. Well, you know, I've been here. I'm really a sound short chick, just for the record. I mean, this is relatively new to me. I kind of migrated northwest through 2 marriages, you know, and here I am, and I'm surprised that I'm still here.
Right.
I'm not disappointed. I'm just surprised. Because sometimes you just have to go the way the wind blows.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So as a little girl, did you dress up as a judge?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I didn't. I really didn't predict this for me either. It kind of just was the evolution of my career.
Yeah.
And even though my father was a judge, I never said, well, that means I'll be a judge. It was just things evolved, and it just feels like the next right step to take for the community.
Okay. And so you're just taking it, it's a generational thing. It's like a thing in your family.
Right.
That it's an expectation that you serve. I noticed that a lot with with political people. Often their children are put into or are steered into public service. You know, and you know, I've seen it on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, where the children, the offspring, they're very much into public service. Right. And it's something that I think as a regular person, and I told you I'm a political agnostic, the audience can know that too. I'm not supposed to look at the camera again, but I just did. I'm a political agnostic, but I do appreciate it when I see public servants, you know, being in public service and raising their children that way.
Right. It is sort of a family tradition because my great-grandfather was also the mayor of Yonkers. My great-grandfather was an alderman, which was like a councilman at the time. So I have many generations of public service. Also, my mother is a teacher, and she always taught children with special needs. So they both instilled that in me as something that you need to do and you should do. And I think they're right. And I tell my children the same thing. You have to figure out who you are, what you're good at, and how you're going to give back to the community.
I think it's interesting your mother was a teacher of children with special needs. Right. You know, because that's very specialized, as you obviously know. Right. Because she's in your family. And so did that give you the impetus to not judge people, to kind of see beneath the surface of a disability, you know, because of her work? I mean, did you ever engage with any of her students for any particular reason?
Right, yes, I did. And she worked in different places. She worked at the Andrews Children's Home in Yonkers. So when I was younger, she'd sometimes bring me to work with her. And so I would see the different issues, and she would explain how things are for people. And she would also explain how some children are growing up in very terrible situations. And that they needed extra help, and that she did whatever she could to teach them and to provide them with some sort of nurturing when they were at school. You know how it is, perhaps there's always that one teacher, and there's that one teacher that makes a difference, you know, in your life. I can't say, you know, well, I believe that to be so as an educator. There's always that one teacher. Sometimes I'm that one teacher once in a while. I'm sure.
Yeah, once in a while, But I think that it's really interesting that you're really at a point, you seem rather young, and you're at this point where you're actually still, climbing and trying to get to another level. So what would be the difference for you being a Peekskill judge and then being a judge, let's say, for Westchester County? What would you do differently?
Well, just first of all, I think I'm older probably than people think I am. Sometimes. I have a 23-year-old daughter.
You are older than I think.
So I'm 47 years old, for the
okay.
record. And so I've been practicing for 20 years. And as a Peekskill judge, we have a criminal calendar here where we arraign criminal court cases. We have misdemeanors and felonies. The felonies that don't get reduced end up going down to the county court. So when I say it's a graduation of the job, it literally is, because I'd be going from here to county court, and that's where the cases that we often arraign end up. So I've also trained for the job as a city court judge. They've sent me to training at the Judicial Institute in White Plains. So I have many weeks of training that the other candidates don't have as well. So I'm literally ready to start the job day one. I have trial experience and training, and I'm ready to go.
It's interesting to me that you're very ambitious. I mean, I guess a regular citizen would think that there might be some kind of an agenda involved, but I have to ask you, how do you make a decision? Because the decisions that judges make, and we've all seen it, we see it on court TV, we see it on Judge Judy, we see it as on watching the city council meetings here, and they change people's lives one way or the other.
Right.
So it must be quite a process that you go through in order to make a decision. I mean, is this something that's like an inherent personal process, or is it a process that you go through that's based on learning?
I think it's a combination. Since I've been doing this for so long, and I've had so many clients, and I've been fighting for people's rights and meeting people who are in crisis and their families are in crisis, I've learned to assess people when they come in front of me, and figure out sort of what they need. So I think of people on an individual basis, and that's what I do. What was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
Is it an internal process, or is it a process is it something that you've learned?
Right. So it's both. So I'm drawing on all of my experiences. I'm drawing on all my experiences as a public defender for 20 years, and people that I've met and experiences that I've had, and people have been evaluated for mental health treatment and drug treatment, and we've had social workers evaluating people, talking to people's families over the years. All of this sort of guides what I'm doing up to this time. That's just all my experience that I've had. So I've talked to my clients, and I've talked to victims, and I really have a full perspective about what's going on. Yeah, and that brings a different perspective, because a lot of judges used to be prosecutors rather than public defenders. So it brings a new, more balanced perspective to the bench, I believe.
Yeah. I didn't know if it was weighted one way or the other. I often wonder that.
Yeah, in Westchester particularly, there aren't a lot of former public defenders that are actually judges now. There are a lot of former prosecutors.
Right. And why do you think that is?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. I think sometimes the work of a public defender is hard, and I've had a public defender. I've had people that I work with at the Legal Aid Society, where I work in the Bronx, say, "I didn't know we could become judges. I didn't know." And I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean? Of course you should become a judge. You're exactly the person that should become a judge. Why should only a prosecutor become a judge, right?" So it lends balance. Does
a lawyer? How should I say this? Does a lawyer have to be either a prosecutor or a defender in order to be a judge? Can a lawyer be, let's say, an intellectual property lawyer? Could that person become a judge?
Absolutely, and I believe it's you have to have 10 years of legal experience, and then you can become a judge. The problem is, if you want to become a county court judge and you have no criminal law experience, that won't be a great experience for the people that are appearing in front of you. You really need somebody that has the experience to back it up, that knows how to conduct trials, that knows the issues that are coming before them. I've heard lawyers complaining that that's very difficult to have a new judge that's not trained in that area.
Yeah, imagine that you might at times find situations where you have to sort of look inside your heart as well.
Right, absolutely. Right, and I really do feel that as a public defender with my clients, and now as a judge, I really treat people as I would treat myself or my children or my family or my friends, because people are people, and you need to really consider each person and who they are.
Yeah, it's a very, I think people are extremely complex.
Right.
You know, and I don't know if I could do what you do, because it'd be hard for me not to consider every single thing about them.
Right. You just have to take the tools that you've learned and use that tool bag to sort of try to. Sometimes it's damage control, and sometimes it's intuitive, or it's. As a mom, sometimes it's motherly, I think, to a certain extent.
Okay.
And you really just try to do, for me, I feel like it's my job to do the best thing I can do for people. And so when I meet them or after they leave, they'll have some sort of progress in their life.
I'd like to see the fact that there are more women, moving this way. Of course I'm going to be an advocate for women because I'm a woman. Not that gender should make a difference. But I think it's kind of important. I think there's a flavor that's added to what you do as a judge. I don't imagine that you would be the same kind of a judge as another man. A man would be. Right. Especially when it comes to the fact that there are a lot of children are caught up in the legal system. Right. Now that must be a real tough a tough situation to deal with. There's so many kids caught up in the legal system. Right. And that's particularly important, and really the most crucial and most important phase where you can see somebody in the criminal justice system, because that's the time where you can sort of maybe catch a problem and change it and reverse it for the better and put somebody on a new course for the rest of their life. So that's the most important, and those are really the most serious cases if you think about it, because you have the potential to change the course of somebody's life. Do you ever have the option to refer like a troubled youth to social services? I often wonder that. I heard people talk about family court. I just can imagine that most of the time it's heartbreaking. Most of the time. Right. Yes, absolutely. And so I imagine that a judge would have the resources to make referral to a specific agency, and I guess with your experience, you would know what would be appropriate for someone. Right. So that judges have the power to do that, and attorneys can also try to find programs for people. And there are shelters, and there are programs and job training and vocational educational programs out there for people as well. And even family counseling programs for people that are much younger. Yeah. And I think a lot of times people don't get help because they don't know where to go, and if they know where to go, they believe they can't afford it. Right. Do you find a lot of people that come past your gavel or repeat like many times, oh, it's you again? Do you see a lot of that? I haven't seen a lot of that as a judge, but that does happen too. And so that's what the cycle needs to be broken. And that's why when you have somebody before you, you really should try to do the best you can to figure out what the issues are so that they don't end up back again. And often it could be a drug treatment issue or a mental health treatment issue. So if you want to stop that in its tracks, you need to find out and remedy that problem. Yeah. Do you ever have trouble sleeping at night? Yes, and especially when I first started as a public defender in the Bronx, it was very difficult. It was all new for me. Yeah. It was tragic, and it was very hard. At first, I have a level of professionalism and intuition now, but at first it's very difficult. And I spent nights crying myself to sleep at the injustice of it. And but now I am more professional and I'm more objective about it, and I'm just focused on doing good work. It must be hard. You have to be very pragmatic, don't you? Right. Yes, absolutely. I can't imagine it. I judge art in another country, and that's hard. Yeah, it is. It is hard, but if you feel like you're doing the right thing, it's not as hard. Yeah. Right? So you feel a passion. Right, and you feel like I'm doing my best and I'm doing good work, and then it's not as hard. Do you feel good about how you raised your children?
Yeah, my kids are great. And I think as a mom, that also lends itself to my work because my kids are all different too. Every kid that you have, they all have their different issues and their different problems, and they surprise you every day with new things.
Wow.
So it's, great being a mom. I love my kids, and I also teach my kids the same thing to, figure out what you'll give back to the world next. And as a woman, as a progressive Democrat in this county and in the world, we need more moms and more women sort of standing up, taking charge, running for office. We have the majority of the women in the state are women and are voters, and the majority of judges are not. And I'm pro-choice as a woman, obviously as a progressive Democrat, and what's going on nationally in this country. We really need to stand up and lend ourselves to service and to this county and to this country.
Do you believe that the action really happens on a municipal level? It's interesting. I'm wondering that because everybody will vote in the presidential election, and they don't vote in the local elections as often or as much.
Right.
But doesn't it really? Do you feel that it really? I feel that it happens on this level.
Right, and there's always another level, right? So if you support somebody now and you put them in a place of power, they will be at the next level and the next level down the line as well. So you're supporting that person and that person's ideals for the long run.
What would you like to see for Westchester County in terms of justice?
I would like to see for Westchester and for the state really more programs for people. Some people do, they are sentenced to serious sentences, but during that time, there should be more programming to improve them as they're in jail, rather than, I haven't met anybody that said, wow, that prison sentence really did me a lot of good. I'm so glad I did that, sort of thing. So while people are...
I interviewed somebody the other day that said that.
Oh, really?
Oh,
okay.
Yes, on my podcast. He said just that.
All right, so then maybe he met with some good programs while he was in there, because I think what they need in there, so they need more, as I've been saying, more mental health treatment, more drug treatment, more job training, more education. And there is some of that in there, but I think there needs to be more. And perhaps he took advantage of what was there. So people will re-enter society eventually, and they need to be helped to do that, to come back and make society more healthy.
Not everybody has the wherewithal to do this, I think if it's a white-collar crime, you might, because you're from a different sort of environment and a different population of stuff up here, you have the wherewithal to make the best of it because that's all you can do. But nobody knows what the best of it is until they get there.
Right.
I don't suggest people go to jail to learn how to, make the best of themselves.
Right.
But, it's interesting you said that because it was a lawyer that fell from grace and made good on it.
Right.
And he said it was a good experience for him. He had to have that experience. He needed to have that experience. I don't want to see you fall from grace. No,
Right.
I would not want to see that at all. I think it's important to understand. The reason I agreed to interview you is I think it's very important to understand in this society in America that we're in right now, to understand what makes a judge tick. I'm not going to throw out names. I did mention Judge Judy, whatever, but I was I'm thinking about other people. I have someone I graduated from high school with who's a judge in Massachusetts, and I don't hear anything bad about him. But I think it's important for people to understand what makes a judge tick. I can imagine it's really hard for you to be apolitical because of your background.
It is very hard, and as a judge, the job itself is isolating because I'm not allowed, as a sitting judge, I'm not allowed to be involved in anything political anymore. I've spent my life being involved in causes and political things, and then as a judge, you're not allowed to do that anymore, which makes sense because I have to be impartial. I can't look like, to the community, I can't look like I'm doing inappropriate things or taking one side or another.
Right.
So that makes it harder. It's sort of isolating. But I'm a part-time judge here and also a public defender. So I was able to keep one foot on the ground as a public defender and then as a judge.
Yeah.
And that's been a great transition for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't just get whisked away and into my chambers in the robe.
Right.
I'm still wearing the suit on some days of the week and the robe on others. And I still have clients at the Legal Aid Society in the Bronx, and I'm still appearing as a judge here. So that's been a great transition for me as a judge as well.
Are the cases that you would actually engage in on a county level be much different than what you engage in on a municipal level?
No, not really, because we arraign all the felonies here. They just would end up in the county court.
Oh, I didn't know.
So when I end up in the county court,
Yeah.
the cases will end up in the county court as well, and then I'd be ruling from there. And they have programs in county court as well, like a mental health treatment court, drug treatment court, and things like that as well.
That's a good thing to know.
Yeah.
So do you feel that the system is set up well enough at this point where people are actually, where the government or the system is actually implementing these programs as part of a protocol? It sounds like it should be a protocol.
Right. So yeah, sometimes it is. And the drug treatment programs have proven to be very successful for people that graduate from them. But the mental health treatment is lacking. There aren't enough programs, and for people that are incarcerated, there aren't enough beds in the programs for them, so that needs to be improved.
Yeah, not enough beds. Wow.
Right.
Who knew?
Right.
Yeah, I think that there'll be a lot more things for you to address in the future. I think you're going to have a very busy life no matter which way the wind blows.
Right.
With you, with regard to your election, you know, or not, whatever which way it goes.
Yeah.
I think, no, it sounds like you're dedicated to public service.
Right, that's correct.
You know, and I'll just say this, that I'm really happy you came on the show, and I'll say to whoever's listening, I'd be willing to interview a Republican, but they haven't asked. Okay, and that's the only reason. But you know, I really appreciate you being so candid. You know, and coming on the show and being so honest. And you are a very, very interesting woman.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, I like that enigmatic thing. That's my key word. My key word is enigmatic. That would be me. But I think that's beautiful. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And keep doing good work.
Thank you.
You know, no matter what happens.
Right.
You know, just keep doing good work because that's what we want to say.
Right, and that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Melissa.
you so much. It was
this
great
was
to be
really,
here.
really good. Thank you so much for coming to the show. And I hope to talk to you again someday.
Right.
I really do.
I'd love to come back.
And I'll be stalking you. Don't worry. That's what I do. You know. But thank you so much for being on the show. And I thank the audience for coming back and giving me the privilege of interviewing all these people and bringing them to you. And I always say it, this is the best job. This is the best job. I really love it because everyone who comes on this show has something to offer. It's very interesting and I always learn something new. And I'm looking forward to everyone coming back next week and listening to me again. I thank my director, Jim Brooks, and my sound tech, Joe Pisano. They do a great job and they always do it with a smile. Thank you very much. Bye.